on the dot. Let's get started. I want to be respectful of your time. So before anything, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. I know you have options, but like Southwest says, you can choose whatever you want, but you chose this session. So I really want to make sure that it is beneficial for you and that you find it uh, applicable to what you are doing. So this is thinking visually through sketch notes. I'm going to be using an iPad, but you don't have to. Sketchnoting, I did it in the classroom as just using regular paper and pencil. Then I moved on to Sharpie pens, Sharpie markers. But it could be done in any way. So I appreciate you all, and I hope that this session is fun for you and engaging, and that you find something, some little nuggets of knowledge that you can bring into your classroom, because that's really what this is about. And before I continue, I do want to thank the PSJA team. They do an amazing job at putting this together. I know virtually, I feel that it's a little bit more complex than putting an in-person conference. I know they've been working really hard, and I appreciate the leadership and then the work that the whole team does there. So again, this is Thinking Visually Through Sketchnotes. My name is Omar Lopez. I am an instructional technology specialist here at Region 1, where I've been for the past 3 years, a little over 3 years, and doing instructional technology workshop sessions, PD for teachers, educators, coaches, all throughout. Before that, I was a middle school teacher. I taught seventh grade, eighth grade ELA, eighth grade science, seventh grade ELA, eighth grade science. Huge change from seventh grade classroom in ELA to eighth grade science. And then I also did technology applications. So I did that for 18 years. And now I'm here on Region 1, doing what I love to do, and that's teaching and teaching others, not only students, but also adults. So throughout the session, please let me know if there are any questions. You can unmute your mic, drop them into the chat. I think I should be able to have access to the chat at any point, but just have that in mind. So I'm going to jump out of here, and I'm going to go into the iPad so that we can start talking about drawing and sketchnoting and the components of sketchnoting and how we can bring into the classroom. So if you allow me, I'm just going to stop sharing here. And now I'm going to share my other screen. And let me make sure that the chat is open. Chat's there. Register. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to share my iPad. And this is my iPad. I am using an application. I'm going to be writing on it, just so that as I'm providing notes, there's also some of it here. The application that I'm currently using is called Paper, and it used to be by Paper by 53. Now you find it as Paper by WeTransfer. So that's an application that allows to transfer large files. That's the one that I'm currently using right now, Paper by WeTransfer. It's a free app. You can download it to your iPad. There is a paid version. What the paid version does allows you to have a lot more tools, but also a lot more notebooks that could sync across your devices. So I have an older iPad, my original iPad, where I did some of my work, and that's synced, but I can open the same notebook on a couple of devices. It's $12.99 per year. I find it useful because I do have several devices. You don't have to. Everything else is pretty much the same. So that's just one application. So again, Paper by WeTransfer. Another application that I use very often is called Fresco, or as some folks say it, Fresco. It is Fresco and this is an Adobe app. And this one looks like this. Right here at the bottom, just that FR, that is what Fresco looks like. And this brings me to this piece. This application syncs perfectly with your Adobe Creative Cloud. Now, let's say I don't want to pay for my Adobe Creative Cloud because I don't have $300 to pay a year. But Adobe, this application is free. The only thing that is changes a little bit is that your storage is going to be a lot less than if you had the Creative Cloud storage. Also, it's important to mention that even if you don't have enough storage on the cloud with Adobe, you can save all of this work on your iPad, on your device. So if storage isn't a problem, because all of these tools here that are part of the paid version are also free. Again, it's just the storage. I love Adobe Fresco because those of you that might be going into design or that do a little bit of design, maybe some CTE teachers teaching Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, these actually open up in Adobe Photoshop. If you open it up on your computer, these files transfer to Adobe Photoshop. I'm not familiar with Photoshop, so I wouldn't even jump on that. But a lot of folks do love that because it syncs very seamlessly into Adobe Photoshop, and then you can change it around here. So another application that just came, and I just found out because I went to a boot camp type of thing on sketchnoting, is an international sketchnote camp. It takes place all over the world. This year just happened to be in San Antonio last week, so it worked out perfectly. And that application is called Concepts, which is this one right below. You can't see. We have Object Viewer, and then there's Concepts there on the bottom right. This application allows us to do a lot more features here, and it's got the same thing where we can write, do a new drawing, and it becomes. So what I want to show you this really quick. I'm not gonna jump into it, but I do want to show you how it becomes an infinite canvas. And it just keeps growing. Right now, that was at 50, 500%, 8,000, 1,000, 1,600%. So it's a good application. So it's anyone. So if you're one of those adventurers, maverick type of folks that likes to go and try out new things, I opened it. I figured it out. I'm sorry. I figured I could download it for free. It is Concepts. It works great on the iPad. However, what we want to talk about more than anything is how do we get started with sketchnoting? So I do want to mention that you don't have to know how to draw. That is the least of worries. Some people say, well, I don't know how to draw. That is perfectly fine. You don't have to be an artist to do sketchnoting. That's not what sketchnoting is about. Sketchnoting is a process, is an approach to internalizing concepts that you are learning about. If you're learning about the Civil War, well, what are some icons that we can draw that ties into the Civil War? If we are writing about atomic structure, what are some drawings that we can use for atomic structure? Um, it is true that some topics are easier to draw than others. Uh, But the idea is that we as learners, including your students, use this as a learning strategy to process the complex and make it simple, take that abstract, right, and make it into a form, into a product that is a little bit easier to understand. And again, if you have any questions, please stop me along the way and we'll get started. So the first thing that we want to talk about here is we just need 5 basic shapes to get started with sketchnoting and doing some process. Really, 5 shapes. These shapes are a square or quadrilateral, because you see it's not a perfect square, a triangle, a circle, a line, and a dot. Those are the only shapes you need to be able to draw to get started with sketchnoting and drawing icons. For instance, let's say we want to draw some mountains. Everybody's already like, okay, perfect. We'll just draw some triangles. right? Some mountains. Now we draw a few lines and we give it some depth. And it's easy way to draw some mountains. Well, how about if we want to draw a tree? We draw our quadrilateral, and we're gonna, instead of doing just a regular circle, then we do and maybe a squiggly circle. And then we add a few lines to give it a little bit of a different feel, a different look to it. A plane, we draw a quadrilateral or rectangle. We draw a triangle. There's another square and a triangle, and then maybe some triangles like that. So again, it's just a matter of putting these shapes together. Books are the easiest for us to draw. We're gonna tilt, excuse me, our quadrilateral a little bit, and then draw some lines and some dots along the way. So this is just using basic shapes. We can draw a pizza, we can draw a pizza box, we can draw a cake. All of it is drawn just using these five basic shapes, but putting them together in a sort of way. And you'll see a lot of illustrators that start doing a bunch of circles and then connecting. And a lot of those circles look into lines. People often ask me, well, how can we draw people? People are very easy to draw too. And again, we start off with a rectangle. And it's just a regular stick figure. So we can draw them, make it bigger, and we start adding them on there. So if you ever look at my sketch notes, they're the roughest sketch notes. Lines are crooked, lines are not, they're asymmetrical. It's it, it's not perfect by any means. And that is one thing that I like to tell individuals or teachers that I'm working with. When we're doing sketchnoting, it's going to be rough because it is a way that you are processing this information. So as we move on, the next thing we're going to talk about is creating an icon library so that you can start using these words or these symbols for your sketch notes. The idea is to find a way to connect those thoughts, connect those messages, connect that information in a way that's accessible to us, in a way that makes sense for us. So I'll move on to the next one. Now, when we look at people, let's say I want this to be Frida Kahlo. What is iconic of Frida Kahlo? I heard somebody's thought say the unibrow, right? So she's got a unibrow. Maybe she's got like a little chongo. Maybe she's wearing a longer dress. Let me undo that. Let me change. Okay, so when we make little changes like that, the basic structure is still the same. But we start tailoring to whatever we feel that person is. Now, when we look at it, it might look a little off, but again, the idea that a student or a person working with this might be able to make sense once he or she looks at the icon later. Now, if we talk Abraham Lincoln, we know the top hat. If we talk about Albert Einstein, we'll see the little frizzy hair that he would have. So all of that is where students start making those connections. And maybe you do too, as far as if they want to create a character. You don't have to create a character. And let me see if I have one here. Let me show you this one. It says it takes longer on slower connection, but it'll load in just a minute. So that'll give me a time to take a sip of, never mind. So when we look at light bulbs, right? So here I can see, I'm gonna, where we start with a circle and maybe like a rectangle and another rectangle, and that creates our base. And then once we have that, we can build from those basic shapes. If you look at a shape, for instance, this one right here, the circle's all skewed up, the lines are all skewed up, but we're using that to be able to show what a light bulb might mean. Even in the word sketch 50, you have a base in the underground of this, in the background of the sketch before we actually start doing that. So I'm gonna come back to this one over here again. Basic shapes is all you need to start building a icon library. One of the things that we talk about is creating a city. Is just little rectangles, pointy lines, a triangle, and then we build from there. So the square, triangle, circle, lines, that is the basis of everything that you're doing if you're going to draw some of these icons. The next thing that I want to talk about is creating an icon library. Now we can change things up a little bit here because we have some shapes, and I don't know if you can see my background on here. But anyways, we'll skip through it. Some of these shapes that we see could also be used for a letter, like you saw in the beginning where I had this title, Thinking Visually. So in this title, we have the pencil. Notice how rough it is to represent the letter I. This individual here also represents the letter I. We have some glasses that I get, somebody might see them and chuckle and say, those are not even glasses. But to me, the learner that's working with the Sketchnotes, it is a pair of glasses. And to me, that represents vision. I got an airplane flying to some notes, and notice how rough all of this is. If I were to zoom in, that makes no sense. But when we put it all together and we look at notes, okay, that makes sense to, well, at least for me, right? It's some writing on a paper. And that's how, it's not so much of a dual coding vocabulary, but it's a way for you or for the students to make sense of what the message is. So I'll come back to icon library. In here again, I can take this and maybe instead of drawing a pencil, we draw a pen for icon library. It is just rectangle, half a circle, and then a crooked line with a triangle at the bottom. Some of the shapes that we were talking about. Let's erase this, the letter C, and maybe in a science classroom, we're talking about poles, we're talking about positives and negatives. What is something that we use in a classroom that can look like a letter C? Well, maybe It is a magnet. And the magnets have red, and I'm not too sure the other one's blue or gray, but we have a magnet that stands for the letter C, and now we're dual coding some of these words. When we start with the icon library, we also like to talk about how some of these words or some of these symbols, uh, better, have multiple meanings. When I say the word idea, for instance, many of you are going to think of a light bulb, right? Because, okay, well, light bulb. And like I said, we can start off with a circle, curve the lines, and then maybe do that, and then curve the lines. So here, we just come in there, and if we want to be fancy, then we can always come and erase this, and we can just redo our lines once again there. So this could be an idea. What else can a light bulb stand for? Well, it could also be maybe learning. But what's another way that we can do learning? So learning, maybe we'll take that quadrilateral, do like the negative part of a circle, line, line, and then drop more lines there. If we want to, we can add a little shadow underneath there. So when we talk about learning, that's a graduation cap. Now, this graduation cap can mean learning, but it could also mean school. It could also mean success, right? Because when you graduate, that is part of being successful. But when we look at success, well, maybe we want to show success, look like an extended circle. We got our two lines, our triangle, our rectangle, above the rectangle, and then some crooked lines to show that a trophy, and if we want to be more specific or more clear, we can color it yellow. And that could be also for success. Now, this trophy can also be for champion. Now, I understand I'm going from one thing to another, but what I want you to understand is that maybe one icon can have multiple meanings. And if we show that to our students, that could be something that helps them internalize. So it's a practice that can mean more than one thing as we are building our library. And we'll create some icons right here in a little bit to connect with some of the familiar icons that we have for the classroom. When we look at school, we can start with one big square one, maybe here. And then we can draw the flag. And like a friend of mine used to say, well, if it's a little not so evident that it's a school, you can always add the label to it, and it shows that it is a school, in fact, for everybody. That's just in case. She likes to do that. I'm going to stop for a moment here. Let me check the chat really quick to see if there's any questions. And I'm having, where is the chat? Oh, somebody said eyebrows, flowers, perfect. Yes. So you see here on my background, I'm going to stop sharing. So that way, if you pin me or if you see me speaking, all of these icons, there's that Apple Pencil for the letter I, there's that magnet, There's the N for nitrogen, a light bulb for the letter O. So all of these icons are part of an academic piece in that icons that can be used for the classroom. I want to come back and share my iPad again. And we are here. I'm going to go back to my favorite app, which is again is Paper. And I'm going to start a new page because I want us to work on an icon library of academic concepts that or academic icons that we could use for the classroom. One thing that I used to do with my students all the time because I was working on an iPad. So I told them, okay, let's divide our paper and we'll divide it in 4. So that way I can tell my students, okay, guys, we are on Q1. This is all of Q1. So they know that what Q, that's supposed to be 3. So they know we're on quarter 1. Our next section of notes is going to be on quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. So right now, if you're following along, we're going to focus on quarter 1. And what are some common, very common, let me bring the chat back up here, sorry. What are some common icons that we see in the classroom? Well, again, the one of the most common ones is a pencil. We can draw a pencil. And again, it's just doing that almost, in fact, let me switch to pencil myself here. We have the triangle or the rectangle. We have the triangle. We can add another little square on top and then another little square on top. And then we just make these lines. We darken the tip of the triangle and that's our pencil. Very, very simple. We need to have an icon to tell our students, all right, students, every time you see this icon, I need you all to write. It's done. Another icon, and I'm going to continue in pencil. Just here, we're still on icon 1. Maybe students need to be able to not to scale at all, but you already know that that's a ruler, right? So we have our quadrilateral, our rectangle. We have longer lines and then little lines in between. And that's a ruler. What if we want an icon for students, to select the main idea? Okay, well, for main idea, maybe we do want the light bulb, or maybe we want a star. If we want our students to read, we can do a book in a couple of ways, and we're still on icon 1. So notice we're going to do this and curve the lines, and then just then get out of it a little bit. So we look, the base is still a rectangle or a quadrilateral, but we've curved some of the lines here. And that's a book. I showed you a book a while ago. We could also do a book laying flat. So we start off with our skewed or our crooked rectangle. And if you add some lines, it looks like it says something. What if we want to draw like a beaker? Again, we start off with, I'm going to start off with a pencil. Right? We could say that that's the basic shape of a beaker. It's just 4 sides to it. But if we come in with a pen, I'm going to curve the bottom a little bit, do a little piquito, curve the top a little bit, and then just go in there and add some lines. If you want to get fancy, then you can add some shade there. Now, let's say there's a chemical reaction going on in there. We'll draw some squiggly lines. And maybe draw some bubbles. And draw some bubbles that have already popped with lines. And then draw some lines here so it can look like there's a shadow to it. Let's say we want to draw the world, right? Because we're looking at a social studies unit. We draw a circle. We know the circle is tilted at 23.5. We know that's the equator. And we know that kind of Mexico has something that goes like down like that. That's South America. We know Yucatan goes like that. We know Florida scrolls down. And then we just kind of squiggle a bunch of lines to go in here. And I'm just adding squiggly lines. You know, Australia somewhere over here, maybe some islands, and that's our world. If we want to add some shading just for fun, we can add some shading to the pencil with a pencil or a lighter color. Now, if I don't have a lighter color or pencil, what I like to do is just change the color. See here, I got the light blue, the green, the black, and then that gray. I just use that gray color to add some depth to the world. If I'm looking at a social studies unit, what are some concepts? Let's talk about math icons. So I'm going to move on to cue number 2. And what are some math icons that we use? And feel free to add them in the chat, and I'll try to see if whatever you add to the chat, I can draw or sketch in a way. But I think we covered one already. Now, in that same way, instead of drawing a full circle, how about, can we draw a calculator? Well, calculator is just a bunch of squares or quadrilaterals. Let's do one laying down. We know it's got a big screen. So there's another quadrilateral. And then it's got some things here that if we're looking from far away, and I'm super zoomed in right now, you know, it's got a big button there. And then I can just add more buttons here. Oh, it looks like a smiley face. This looks like BMO. So let me add more. And don't forget that it's got a charger. So that could also be we can use the same shape to draw a phone. What else can we draw in math? Maybe that plus or division symbols. It's very easy. And all I'm doing is using the same basic shapes that I used a while ago to show some mathematical concepts. Maybe I want to show growth over time. And I use a different color to show how the product or how there's been growth. Um, and this takes me back, it allows me to connect to what I was saying earlier, is that one, this graph alone could be stats, growth, data, chart. So that one icon can cover multiple words depending on how we use it, depending on how these this is what you're learning. Um, that's math. Let's do some science. Some science, and this is one of my favorites, right? I'm gonna stick to black just in case we're all the same one. So we have here, we know that's atom. A lot of people draw also the atom by making squiggly lines like that. And there's just a squished circle and a bunch of circles, and they're all squished. Maybe we want to draw a cell, and we'll start off with a circle, then a semicircle. We draw more circles to show the nucleus, and then we add a bunch of little things in between. Oh, maybe the cells has a flagella. We can add that too. Um, and again, coming back to the basic, basic shapes. One of them that was very difficult for me at one point was the double helix, but it's just squiggly lines, and then we connect. Now, if you show these to an illustrator, they're gonna obviously tell you what are you doing, right? But for students, when they're trying to process this, for example, DNA replication, or when DNA splits into RNA, we can start off. And now we can say that's the concept of when DNA splits. Instead of being double helix, it's just a single and it's splitting. We can do the same thing with cells as they're coming together. So in science, I know it might be a lot easier to show some of these concepts. It might not be the same for uh, other subjects, but the idea is that students pick up, or you as a learner pick up on certain icons to tell a story, to summarize a concept. Um, it doesn't necessarily mean that every word that an individual says is going to be drawn out. Not at all, because when we combine sketch notes and it says in the description, let me look for some here. Right. So if we look at this one, this was Jorge Valenzuela talking about uh, unlocking tools to help students connect. So notice how help others achieve. I left the text and all I added was big quotations, and it's part of the sketch note. He's talking about tools. Well, there is a spiral notebook, which is a triangle and then some parts of circles. I have the world there. I added some color. We added some a frame. Oh, there's that graph again. And you'll see that a lot of my icons, it looks like I'm repeating everything, the same of the icons, because I am repeating a lot of my icons. I've developed this icon library, and you will too if you get into this with your students. They're gonna keep using the same thing. So why is this important? Because your students will get into the routine that, like I mentioned earlier, every time they see a pencil, they're gonna know it's time to write. Every time they see the YouTube play button, which is just that's YouTube, that tells them, hey, watch a video or do a video. If they see a microphone, and then my lines are all messed up, maybe they need to record a voiceover. If they see a book, they need to read. Or if they see the spiral, that means notes. So you get into the idea of being consistent with some of these icons, and they're all going to look different. You're not going to draw the same icon all the time. I'm going to just delete everything here. But it's going to help your students understand and make sense of what is happening. Mentoring is key. Notice how I just drew a little key there. These frames is not something out of the ordinary. Some of these frames I don't even close all the way, but it's just creating that box because that's important. Let me look at my notes, make sure that I covered everything here. So I want to come back and just talk about elements of a sketch note. How much time do I have left? Can somebody tell me? I think I'm good. Maybe I have like 10 minutes. Let me see. To 1:45. Okay, I got like 10 minutes. The other part of sketchnoting, and as I was mentioning, is frames. Some of you have seen me create these frames, and what if I want to add some depth to it? Maybe I'll just do the squiggle or these diagonal lines and do that frame and shade these in a little bit. And it's just by adding some hatches, some lines, and this is a frame. Now, as I'm covering these frames, I'm also going to be talking about lettering. Typically, a sketch note will have all caps all throughout, but you don't have to. Maybe you just have really not necessarily fancy, but long words. So like this frame here, I'm adding that box around it. I'm going to add a drop shadow as if it's floating. And all I'm doing is getting that rectangle, adding another rectangle here and shading it in. Or maybe you want to have really wide letters, and we do curvy lines and then a couple of triangle looking things. To do that frame, but that's not even a frame, that's a banner. That's okay, because for you, it's the same thing. So you're changing your letters to mean something to you. And there's a lot of people that do very fancy lettering. That's not what this is about. If you're going to be publishing something or sharing with other individuals, then by all means, right, use that if you're an illustrator. But in the classroom, sometimes we don't have, no, not sometimes. Let me rephrase that. In the classroom, we don't have time to get fancy with our illustrations, to get fancy with the work. So as they are happening, then that's how we are doing it. By rule of thumb, we're looking at about 20, no more than 30 seconds per icon on whatever it is that we are drawing, whether it's a molecular structure of methane with CH4, or whether we're talking about the desert and we need to draw a cactus and we need to draw some cliffs and some tumbleweed. That is, we're looking at 20 to 30 seconds so that we can draw that. The whole idea is that we take the essence of the piece of text, that we take the essence of the lesson, the essence of a video, and we create some sort of visual collection of our thoughts and our understanding into a piece of text. I'm going to cover a couple of more frames here. One that I am very fond of, and I do it all the time, is just this photo frame. And I can even do this, and that's just as if it were hanging. I like to also almost always add this. It's a red thumbtack. So it's just to cause or create some sort of contract or create some sort of visual out of it. Very often you will see me do like the one that I did that I showed you a while ago, and it's just one of these is wrong, but it's okay. To frame in that quote right there. Uh, to draw a television, which is I like to, like I said, draw a television. We draw that box, and then we draw a larger box. And some of you older, I'm sorry, younger, some of the younger generation is not going to remember a TV like this. So again, rectangles, circles, lines, and dots. So this is a, believe it or not, younger teachers, this used to be a TV. Um, and we would have to get up and twist the knob or change the dial so that we can change between the 6 channels that we had all along, and the only thing we had. So adding these frames to grab our ideas and put them all into one. So what we want to do is, and I would recommend this, and it's going to take me a while. Hold on, let me, because I have an icon library that I would like to share with you somewhere. Just so that you can see some of the examples. I promise I will find it soon. Maybe not. Oh, there it is. So an icon library, and I divided this in 12 different boxes. And you'll see how some of the ones that I drew today I have been on here as well. Think my stick figures have changed. The stick figures that I draw now have a little bit more beef to them. So I use a rectangle. I find it easier. But look at think. I have a light bulb. I have the thought bubble, and somebody raising his hand with a question mark. I have there's a piece there for contrasting colors, connect data, global icon, words that mean writing, illustrations that mean process, science, history, reading, and math symbols. So you'll see how I've already done some of these, and I'm just bringing them back to show you that it's the icons that you draw are going to be very rough. They're not going to be smooth at all, but it's going to allow your students to make these connections. Look at my flag, the Liberty Bell that's cracked, 1620 on that rock, and of course, Texas. So we have, it's an icon library that you draw so that when you start looking at what you can use for some concepts, that you can read that. I have a video here that I would like to show you. Let me see this is the right one, because I was about to change it up.
I define it as the process of having original ideas that have value. And
let me switch out. Hold on. I'm going to share this video with you. Let me see if the audio works.
I define it as the process of having original ideas.
Did y'all hear that audio coming from the video? You can let me know in the chat if there's audio. Yes. Okay, perfect. So let's play this.
I define it as the process of having original ideas that have value. And all three of those terms to me are important. It's a process, it's not an event. I mean, sometimes ideas come fully formed, but more often than not, uh, creativity and the development of original ideas evolves through various phases. Often, the idea you start with is not the one that you end up with, or the original idea gets changed and elaborated in all kinds of ways that are a result of the process of working on it. I think that we all have potential for creativity. We're born with it. If you're a human being, it comes with the kit. And to say that people are born with the capacity for creativity, and we all are, I believe it's true. It's equally true to say, though, that very many people never develop these powers properly. They don't understand them, and they don't acquire them or refine them any more than everybody on Earth is literate.
So I'm going to switch back to my iPad. And in just that minute or minute and a half, let me pause this. So he said a couple of things that when he's talking about creativity, he's talking about original ideas. And he talked about three different points here, right? Having original ideas, it's a process. And I'm going to use red just to signify this. It is not an event. And so everybody's born creative. One of the things he talks about is that we get educated out of being creative. If you ever watch his whole TED talk on creativity, he stresses this, how everybody's born creative. We're not taught into creativity, unfortunately, because of the system we're in. And that's just the way that it is. We are educated out of being creative. Studies have shown that students are very creative with high IQ up until third grade. We're not going to talk about what happens in third grade in Texas school systems or others education systems, but that's when students start losing that creativity. They lose it. We do something that challenges it, but that's the idea. So in that 1 minute and a half, notice how my sketch is very rough, but I captured the main concept of what he was saying. Now, me as a sketch noter, I wasn't able to capture everything, but I knew that he talked about creativity to him is being defined by someone who's got original ideas. These original ideas I process in a way that where it's a process. Creativity is a process, it's not an event. So it's not something, oh, you're creative for one day and not creative for the other. That's not what it is about, right? It's a process, not an event. So how do I define process? Well, two boxes with a little star. Now I can continue going from here and maybe add some more. And even though the video is over, this allows me to say, okay, this is where we started. This is our end. So to me, those four boxes and those three arrows tell me it's a process because it's a series of steps. Now, notice this. This right, oh my goodness, sorry, I'm using the eraser. This right there, that is where he talks about how everything's a mess or it's very complex. And to me, the word complex is just squiggly lines where it's difficult to say, what is this? But then somehow they transfer and then everything becomes more clear. So that's another piece of, to me, this piece of notes that is messy writing. When I go back and look at my notes, or when students go back, or when they have to do, I did this on butcher paper. I gave them Mr. Sketch markers that smell nice to them. We put it on the floor, and students just start drawing whatever they think is best. So this is a concept map type of thing, a mind mapping type of approach, and it's a review for the 6 weeks. It's a review maybe for a unit that you did in social studies, maybe for a book summary, and it's not. It doesn't have to be art. It's fast. It's a process that's for you so that you make sense for the students you write of the content being delivered to you. I'm going to leave my this thing on, but I still want to see if there's any other questions or any questions at all. Okay. So I have about 2 minutes. If you have any questions, please let me know. Drop them in the chat, email me. I'm gonna add my email to the chat. You can email me with any questions, or maybe some thoughts of how you've used it, or in fact, if you did any sketch notes or if you have any sketch notes, send them over to me, email them to me. I would appreciate that very much. Also, if you are on Twitter, you can find me at Omar Lopez 0207. Uh, let me on Twitter, and there is that evaluation. I would appreciate it greatly if you completed whatever feedback you have for me. I will take that. If not, fill out that application and be honest, because that's honesty is how we grow. Again, I am grateful for you that you spend half of your afternoon with me. I hope you've had a great conference so far. Huge thanks to the PSJA team. Is Marvin, Valentin came in earlier, Sanaida, Debbie, the whole team over there at PSJA, and of course to Dr. Alejandro Elias for supporting this event. It is an amazing what they're doing out there. I'm gonna be over there at the Best Practices Conference later this month, so stop by, say hello if you're out there. I wish you nothing but the best this coming school year. You guys are awesome. Have a good one.